Project Zomboid b42 stable has finally been released, marking the biggest changes to the game's stable branch in years. Animals, an overhauled crafting system, and huge map updates have completely changed how the game is played. But one of the cooler features I've yet to really engage with is blacksmithing, and I want to forge the holy grail of build 42, a sword. Because while guns in build 42 are more reliable than they ever have been, there are only so many bullets in Knox County, and blades don't need reloading. But forging a sword isn't something you can do in your first week. I'll need a permanent base, a functioning forge, rare materials and skills I've never even touched before, and most importantly, I can't die. But no story of survival starts without a survivor, so let's meet ours. This is Chastity Hines. They'll be spawning in Rosewood, which, while normally is the El Clasico beginner area, is also one of the towns that's been completely overhauled, so I can't resist checking it out. The quest for a blade has 3 steps. Step 1, establish a safe base of operations. Step 2, scour the map for books and resources I need to become a blacksmith. And finally, Step 3, forge a sword and put it to the test at one of Zomboid's deadliest locations, the Crossroads Mall, to see if all our effort was worth it. So buckle in, folks, because this is where the Odyssey begins. Chastity awakens in her living room and promptly changes the channel to life and living. As this is probably going to be a pretty long save, I'm going to need all the random XP I can get. After gaining a level in cooking, Chastity takes a look around the starting house, but doesn't find that much. As such, it's time to leave and see what the outside has for us. Chastity spots a few vans across the street and heads over to investigate, hoping to find a key. Fortunately, we get really lucky, and the gray van has a key ring with the key to the vehicle inside of it. The van itself has no gas though, so we'll have to come back for it later. In the meantime, Chastity heads over to one of Rosewood's newest additions, an actual gun store. While the point of the playthrough isn't to use a lot of guns, they can provide an early power spike, which will allow us to get in the key locations that we need to loot. However, for now, Chastity's gonna have to deal with a small horde that's gathered up around the store. However, there's too many for us to deal with right now, and Chastity wears herself out, forcing her to retreat to another house to rest for now. We rest up and catch a 6 o'clock showing of Exposure Survival before heading back over to the gun store. After taking out what appears to be most of the pack, Chastity heads around the back of the store and sees,
oh my goodness!
But rather than fight them now, we go ahead and let them break down the door so we can gain access to the inside first. When we hear the door finally break, we head back downstairs and go ahead and deal with the zombies that were inside.
I am stupid. I am stupid.
After being tripped up by a crawler, we notice that we have a scratch on one of our arms, and our shirt is completely torn up, so we head back inside to go ahead and resolve that. And after finding a new shirt and bandaging ourselves up, we head inside to check out some of the goodies inside the store. I decide that it's getting pretty late, so I go ahead and move all the guns and ammunition upstairs for now, as it's currently a safe place for us to camp out for the night. We didn't spend the remainder of the day practicing our reloading until we get tired enough to go to sleep. This brings us to the end of day 1, but we're still no closer to crafting a sword than we were when we started, so we're gonna have to get active on day 2. We awaken in time to catch another episode of The Cook Show, and then disassemble this wall using some tools we found at a neighbor's house to gain access to the rest of the ammunition in the store. Then, after moving that upstairs, we go ahead and get moving towards the gas station so we can fuel up that car that we found the keys for. The zombie pop at the gas station isn't too high, but we're already exhausted from fighting all the zombies we had to on the way over here. So as a result, we end up having to turn back and rest up at our base for a little bit. Once we recovered all our stamina at base, we find a gas can in the convenience store, fill it up with fuel, and head over to the van to fill it up. We bring the van over to the gun store to fill it up with all our guns in order to move them to a more permanent base. But once we get there, an alarm goes off, and I have to flee the gun store entirely. We flee all the way down to the Rosewood Fire Department, and as we pull in, we notice there aren't too many zombies here, which is good because this is where I was planning on establishing our permanent base. After breaking into the fire department, we loot some axes and get to work clearing any zombies that are in the immediate area. With the fire station now a relatively safe spot, I head back to the gun store to inspect the damage that the alarm has done, and it looks like a fair few zombies have clumped up around the store now. On top of being out of breath, we're now starting to deal with exhaustion, so I go ahead and make a break for it. Making it back to the fire department just in time to catch another episode of Exposure Survival, we go ahead and go to bed early, causing us to wake up at 1 a.m. when it's still far too dark outside for us to do anything. It also looks like some zombies have gathered up outside of the fire department, so sticking to the streetlights, we take them out. With the base now clear, we go ahead and wait for the sun to come up before we go out the rest of our day. And once the sun arises, we head over to the gun store to try and reclaim our weaponry. We handle the zombies with relative ease this time. We reclaim all our guns and ammunition, and then head over to a bookstore, as we're going to need these skill books in order to gain the variety of skills we're going to need in order to craft a sword. After storing all the guns and books in our base, we spend some time reading through a maintenance book before heading over to the police station to loot the guns over there as well. Once the station's clear, we use our axe to chop down the door to the armory, gaining access to all the guns and ammo from there as well. After storing all the excess guns back in our gun cabinet and loading up our M9 magazines, we continue our raiding spree by heading over to the tool store located by the Gigamart. Making use of the new crafting system is going to require us to use a lot of tools I haven't had to use before, so I'm glad there's now a tool store in Rosewood as well. Pulling up in front of the tool store, we whip out our M9 and start mag dumping. And eventually, the coast looks clear enough for us to get inside of the tool store. We grab pretty much one of every tool that we can find inside of the store, as I'm not sure which ones I'm going to need to be able to craft a sword. We then place all our tools inside the fire department, and do some more reading before bed. At this point, we've gathered most of the supplies we need to turn this place into a fortress, so tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and get started on that. The morning reveals that we've consumed all the food in the fire department now, so before setting up some fortifications, we're going to go back to the Gigamart and grab some perishable food. Getting to the Gigamart reveals that some of the fruits and vegetables have already started to go bad, so it's important that I get the ones that are still fresh into the fridge now while I still have power. As we head back home to dump all our fruits and veg off in the fridge, I start thinking about the best way to fortify our base. Living in a fire department means we have access to plenty of axes, and all the dead zombies around us means we have plenty of rags. As such, we can create log fortifications in the gaps in our fences. We're also going to need to craft this anvil mold if we're going to create an advanced forge in order to create the sword later on. As such, all roads are leading us gathering a bunch of wood for now. So the next day we pull up to the forest and get the chopping. Taking our wood back to the fire department, we go ahead and start building a log wall in the gaps in the fence to keep any zombies out. And this process of gathering wood and making a fence takes quite a while, as we don't end up finishing the southern gap until the next day. But we're not done yet, as there's still an entrance on the northwest side of the fire station that we have to board up as well. We get started on constructing our log wall, but once again it takes until the next day to finish it up. But once we finish placing the last gate, we can rest easy knowing that step 1 of our plan, securing a base, has finally been done. As we wind a day down by reading another book, the helicopter approaches and starts hovering over our building. So thank God we got the walls done when we did. Once you have a real base though, dealing with the helicopter is pretty simple, as I just stayed inside reading and didn't have to deal with any zombies. But the next morning, we see the consequences of the helicopter event, as it looks like a few zombies have penetrated our defenses. So we go ahead and promptly deal with those. Once the base is clear again, we take some of the extra wood that we had from the fence making and turn it into planks so that we can create the anvil mold. But this wooden mold isn't the end of what we need to make. We need to gather clay and create a hand-operated press to create a mold that we can actually smelt with. Fortunately, the hand-operated press recipe is super easy, as it just takes a few planks and some nails, so we get that crafted promptly. There are some clay deposits over by the pond, but we need a sack in order to gather them. So I decide to head over to the local gardening store to see if they have any sacks or if they have any clay in general. It just requires me to clear out another horde first. And with the zombie threat clear, we're able to loot the store in order to search for our clay. And fortunately for us, we do find a sack at the store, so we'll be able to gather some clay from the deposits by the pond. The next day, we use our sack and shovel to go ahead and dig up the clay deposits. Then, using our wooden mold and hand-operated press, we turn it into a clay mold, which once fired, we'll be able to pour iron into in order to form an anvil. We're going to need a kiln though in order to fire our clay mold, which just calls for a bunch of clay in a mason's trowel. So we gather up the rest of the clay deposits by the pond, and then build a kiln so we can fire our mold. Next, we gather more wood, as the kiln requires logs in order to operate, and then fire our mold so we have a ceramic one in order to create an anvil with. But in order to do that, we're going to need to create a furnace. So the next day, we hop in our van and head over to the forest clearing to go look for some large rocks, as creating a furnace is going to require some masonry skill. These rocks weigh 40 encumbrance each, but we can break them down into smaller rocks, which we can then craft into stone bricks, which we need in order to craft that furnace. Once we've created about 40 of these stone blocks, we then go gather a bunch of grass, which we mix up a bucket and some of our clay in order to make some clay cement. Finally, we place our furnace, meaning we have the ability to melt iron components down into our anvil. The next morning, we start out with some masonry work, as we still need to make a crucible, which we can form using a pottery wheel. So after creating a large and small stone wheel, we gather planks and nails until we have what we need to build it. The only issue now is our pottery skill isn't high enough to make the crucible. So we start grinding some vases, but we don't have enough clay here at the base in order to get to the pottery skill we need. So using some meta knowledge I have thanks to a multiplayer save with one of my friends, I'm gonna head over to West Point because I know they have a pottery store with a bunch of clay there. But on our way over there, we get a little sidetracked when I spot some deer and decide it's best to run one over. You see, crafting an advanced forge doesn't only require a blacksmith anvil, but also a pair of bellows, which we'll either have to randomly find or can craft if we have some leather. So we get this deer back to base in order to process it for its leather, which requires us to build a butchering hook so that we can process all parts of the animal. Once we get the deer on the hook, we remove the skin, head, and meat from it, and then carve a bunch of saplings into long sticks so that we can make a drying rack for the leather. Now, I unknowingly built a large drying rack when it turns out I needed a medium one, and on top of that, the hide isn't processed enough to turn into leather, so I have to make a softening beam, and we'll need access to a fleshing tool as well. The softening beam's easy enough, as it's just some planks and nails, but I haven't found a fleshing tool yet. Fortunately, you can craft one using bone. I just have to grind my carving in order to do that. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, if you couldn't tell by the broken windshield, our car has just about had it, as it's stalling all the time now. And there's no way in hell I'm going to bring a bunch of wood back to base by hand, so I need to find a new car. Lucky for us though, it doesn't take too long, as we find the key to a taxi inside a driving school, and the taxi actually has some gasoline in it, so we should be able to drive it over to the gas station to fill it up. After filling up the taxi, we head back to base and get back to grinding our carving. Now, unfortunately, in the bookstore, we didn't find carving 1, so it is taking a lot of effort to grind this, but it must be done. Fortunately for us though, we're able to gain 1 level before the end of the day, and then take a break to do some masonry work, as I want to make a grindstone, knowing that we're going to make a lot of blades in order to level our blacksmithing later on. With a grindstone crafted, we sharpen all our axes, and then head to bed so that in the morning we can get back to grinding our carving. We continue to carve just random shit until the afternoon, until we finally gain another level in carving. Now, I thought this would allow me to craft the fleshing tool, but it turns out you need to know a recipe to do it, which you do auto-learn at level 4, but it means we have to grind more. Now, getting all the way to level 4 isn't something I want to do without a skill book, so I'm going to go on a hunt for a carving book now. I'm going to start my search over at the Rosewood School, hoping that its library will contain the textbooks I'm looking for. Just have to clear another horde first. With the school now looking relatively clear, I head to the library to look for the book I need. And while I do find some books worth hanging on to, I don't find the carving book, so I'll have to look for it elsewhere. I head to bed for the night because in the morning I'm planning on taking a road trip out of Rosewood to go look for the book again. We're heading to Phallus Lake as it's the closest place I can think of that has a bookstore. When we arrive at the good book, there's a few zombies here, but nothing that we can't handle. And as we loot the store, we get super lucky and find carving 2, exactly what we needed. Book in hand, we decide to get the hell out of Dodge and get to reading our carving book. When we return to base, we power through the book in 1 day, and then get carving once again. However, once I get to carving 3, I realized I can actually craft the fleshing tool. I think this is because I have inventive, which means I learned recipes of skill early. Either way, I'm not going to complain. With our fleshing tool crafted, we get to work removing the flesh and fur from our hide, and then craft the proper size drying rack. However, this reveals that we're still not done processing our hide. It turns out that we need a tanning barrel, and that tanning barrel needs a bowl of brain tan, which needs a brain and a bowl. We do not have a bowl. So I head into the suburbs looking for a bowl, which doesn't take too long, and then fill that bowl up with water and the brain of the deer I ran over, which finally allows me to tan the hide and hang it up on the drying rack. Now I just have to wait a week. For our hide now out and drying, I decided it's time to head over to West Point to gather the rest of the clay. However, the fog is impacting my ability to drive there safely, and on top of that, by the time we get there, I might already be experiencing exhaustion. So I turn around for now. On the way back, I spot a van with the keys in the ignition, which is definitely an upgrade over my taxi. So I make an effort to turn that into my primary vehicle. The only thing the van needs to get moving again is some gas. So after filling up a gas can at the gas station, we fill up the van and book it out of there as that area is infested with zombies. After returning home for our pristine van, we do some more reading before bed as we plan on heading to West Point the next day. When we arise in the morning, we immediately hit the road as to not waste any daylight and then arrive at West Point about 3 hours later. West Point is as populated as always, and the pottery studio is right in the middle of town. So we're gonna have a fight in our hands if we're gonna get in there safely. We take a quick little breather in our car and pull it around the other side, revealing an opening that allows us to get into the pottery studio. So after quickly grabbing a bunch of clay, we make a hasty retreat out of West Point. This place sucks. But unfortunately, some of the maneuvers we had to make cost the life of our van, as it's now stalling, and having to consistently restart the vehicle is having a compounding effect on the battery, which is now dying a rapid death. And the battery gives out completely before we make it all the way back to Rosewood, meaning we have to walk a solid chunk of the way there. We're hungry, tired, thirsty, and over encumbered, but that's not gonna stop me from trying to make a play for our old taxi. I start shouting to lead the zombies away from it, and eventually spot an opening that allows me to get into the vehicle and drive it away. This was definitely a lot closer than it needed to be, but hey, I need a car, you know? After returning home, I fix my horrible Moodle situation and start grinding pottery with all the clay that we got the next day. It doesn't take long to get the 1 point in pottery that we need to craft the crucible, so once we have the skill, we go ahead and get that crafted as well. With an anvil mold, furnace, and crucible crafted, the only thing we need now to get the anvil is some iron and charcoal. To get the charcoal, all we need is a shovel to make a charcoal burning pile, as well as a bunch of logs. Like, a bunch of logs. We're gonna go through a lot of logs this playthrough. Then to get some iron, I decide that we can go ahead and dismantle car wrecks. The only thing is we don't have a lot of propane, and we're gonna need a lot of it to get the amount of iron we need. So I head back to the tool store and spot a van I can use outside the Gigamart. So after upgrading our car for what I hope will be the final time, we head back to the tool store and see that there's a propane tank located there, which means we can dismantle a bunch of car wrecks now. We dismantle a few of them and bring the metal components back to our base. I then start smelting all the iron I can find into the crucibles. This process continues into the next morning as we need a ton of iron to make the anvil. However, I make a mistake when I set out to go gather more iron. The van is now stalling, which means we're gonna have to go find another car. After not too much searching, we come across a station wagon with the keys in the glove box. We didn't take it to the gas station to fill it up. It's a good thing the power is still on, or else swapping cars wouldn't be this easy. With our new station wagon, we head down to where a bunch of wrecked cars are in order to gather more iron. Then, after disassembling a few of the wrecks, we return to base to smelt down the components that we retrieved. And this trip gave us enough iron to actually cast our anvil, bringing us one step closer to crafting the advanced forge. After crafting a wooden bucket, which is required to build the forge, the only thing we're waiting on is our leather to finish drying out so that we can craft the bellows. This should be done in the next few days, so we go ahead and craft some stone blocks, which the forge requires as well. We're running low on propane again though, so we head back into the suburbs to look for another tank. And after a few hours of searching, we come across one in the bottom of a basement. And since we're still waiting for the leather to dry, we go ahead and disassemble more car wrecks to get more iron. We then come home and read until it gets dark, but the power's gone out, so we now have limited daylight. We should probably focus on finding a generator relatively soon. The next morning, we notice our hair has grown as we've lived for almost 3 weeks now, so we start the day by giving ourselves a haircut.
Haircut. Yeah, I got a haircut.
Our leather finishes drying around 2 that day, so we can go ahead and now craft the bellows. We get the bellows crafted and head over to the rest of our forge materials to craft an advanced forge. With our forge now crafted, we can now start leveling our blacksmithing. So I start melting down all our iron components into iron chunks, which we can forge in the bars and then other components. For the first set of iron bar quarters, we forge them into simple blades, giving us our first level in blacksmithing. That's 1 down and a lot more to go. The next day, we start off by gathering more wood for charcoal and doing more forging as we continue to grind the skill. And after some power leveling, we end up getting to blacksmithing 2, which is good and bad. It's good because we got another level in blacksmithing, but bad because we don't have the book for the next 2 levels. I continue to forge things throughout the rest of the day, but without the book, progress is going a lot slower. I spend the entirety of the next day just blacksmithing things, and eventually I hit blacksmithing 3. Now, we've been cooped up in base for a few days now, just power leveling smithing, so I get a little bored and had to test some of the spears that I've made thanks to my blacksmithing prowess. We're also using this time to go on a search for a generator, as our base doesn't have one and we've not had power for a few days now. However, walking into this basement might have been my biggest mistake of the playthrough so far. I'm super upset with myself and afraid the whole thing might be over now when I check the health panel and see it didn't even scratch me. Thank God for the elbow pads and knee pads. With that close call behind us, we continue our search for the book and generator up to the next day, but fail in having any success in finding either. The next day, when we check the hood of our car, we see it's in complete disrepair, but if we had some mechanic skill, we'd be able to weld on some sheet metal to fix it. So we get to grinding that skill as well by removing and installing parts of a station wagon nearby base. We go all the way up to mechanics 2, as that's what you need in order to hotwire vehicles, and then continue looting the suburbs in a desperate attempt to find a generator. And while we're not able to find a generator, we do find more propane, which is always nice. Having now spent nearly half a week not making any progress on our smithing, I just say fuck it and start grinding it again. And a solid 6 days later, we finally hit smithing 4. Fortunately, we have blacksmithing 3 and 4, which is nice because that was a brutal grind. So I'm going to now go ahead and read all the books. And thank God for that, because it now only takes 1 day to get the blacksmithing 5. We're probably about halfway the blacksmithing skill needed to craft a sword now, so we're making decent progress. With this new blacksmithing level, we've learned how to craft actual spearheads, which is another upgrade for our melee weapons. We craft these for another day until we get to blacksmithing 6. We're getting really close to being able to forge some of the long-bladed weaponry that I'm aiming for, like machetes and swords, but we don't know the recipes yet. However, since we have inventive, if I go out and find a machete, I should be able to learn how to craft it that way. So we head out on the Rosewood to begin our hunt for long blades. We ended up not finding one in Rosewood, which wasn't a surprise for me, as I now plan on scouring the map to look for a magazine that will teach us how to craft blades, or a machete itself. We start heading towards Maldra, as I found machetes at the factory over there before. There's a large group of zombies in front of the factory though, so we're forced to clear them out. With the coast finally looking clear, we bust down the doors to the factory and look inside for a machete. Unfortunately though, the search turns out to be pointless as none are here. As it's getting late and we're already pretty tired, I decided to spend the night in an apartment located above a bar. And the next morning, I get the idea that maybe a machete will be in the evidence room of the police station. So I got a new area to clear out. Police station ended up being way more populated than I initially thought, so we ended up spending most of the day just clearing it out. We finally end up breaking into the evidence room, but don't have any luck on finding the magazine or a machete, so this was just a big waste of time. Returning home empty-handed, I checked the wiki and see that there's a big chance of these items spawning in military surplus stores. So after resting up at home that night, we headed out on a field trip to the closest one I could think of. After arriving at about noon, we once again get to clearing. While we're clearing, I noticed that the zombie I just killed was wearing a military backpack, and we're still working with a duffel bag from the beginning of the game, so this is a huge upgrade just by itself. We continue clearing on into the evening until we finally get a chance to look at the inside of the store. But once again, no luck on either of the items we've been searching for. Once again, I spend the night camping out in a nearby house, and then decide to head over to the next military store I can think of. Guns Unlimited. All things considered, the place looks relatively tame, so I hop out with my spear and get to clearing once again. We're eventually able to push our way up to the front of the store and check the insides for either a magazine or a machete once again. However, I start getting exhausted before I have time to search the whole store. I'm gonna have to find a place to camp out for the night if I want to fully loot the place. Pulling into a farmhouse located by Echo Creek, we're forced to fight through exhaustion so we have somewhere to sleep for the night. After clearing the place out, we rest for the night and then return to Guns Unlimited to check the garage that usually contains a bunch of camping supplies. However, this garage turns out to be a bust as we fail to find any of the things that we're looking for here. But there is one more spot that we could check at Guns Unlimited. As we head over to the shooting range, a bunch of magazine stands are here, and we luck out when we find American Bladecraft, which will teach us how to make a machete as well as a bunch of other long-bladed weapons. And while this may not teach us how to make a sword yet, we'll auto-learn the recipe when we get to a high enough blacksmithing and long blade skill. So having the ability to make long bladed weapons is going to be super helpful. When we get back to base, we get right back to grinding our blacksmithing skill, as crafting a machete requires level 9 smithing. However, since we have the magazine, we'll be able to do it at level 8. This is another pretty intense grind as it takes us 4 days to get the blacksmithing 8. But once this is done, we're able to craft machete blades as long as the magazine is in our inventory. We're now just a few long blade levels away from being able to craft a sword. After assembling our machetes and the weapons using the blade and a small handle, we head out on the Rosewood in search of a generator. We also use this time to grind our long blade skill. Failing to find a generator in the Rosewood suburbs, we head the mod draw with the plan of searching the storage units for a generator and the bookstore for the last blacksmithing book or the magazine we need in order to craft the sword, as we still don't have blacksmithing 5. Machete in hand, we clear out the road in front of the storage units and then break into the storage facility to see what's inside. However, we do fail to find any of what we're looking for at the storage facility, but we still have some hope of finding what we're looking for at the mod draw bookstore. So after yet another round of fighting, we eventually create an opening which gives us time to loot the bookstore, but once again, we fail to find anything that we're looking for. Deciding we've had enough fighting for the day and we're going to camp out above the bar again, I head back, but have a little accident on the way there. This car is now stalling, so it's no good, meaning we're going to have to find a car here in Mall Draw in order to get back to Rosewood. So I'm really glad I took the time to grind my mechanics earlier, as I've also been doing electrical passively as I loot houses, meaning I can actually hotwire some of these vehicles. With our new vehicle, we head back to the apartment above the bar to camp out for the night and return to Rosewood the next day. However, the hunt for these pieces of literature isn't done yet, as now I'm going to go check out Riverside. There's a school and a bookstore here, so hopefully one of them will have what we're looking for. But our first step is going to be securing our Riverside safe house so that we can camp out for the night if we need be. We fight through another horde of the undead, eventually pushing into one of the local houses to clear it of zombies. Once the house is secure, we rest up inside and then begin our push towards the bookstore. I'm starting to get pretty annoyed though, as this bookstore also doesn't have Blacksmithing 5 or the magazine, but we still have a chance of finding it at the school, so we camp out for the night. The next morning, we pull up in front of the school and start to clear it out, and then search through its many classrooms and library. However, we are still getting super unlucky and failing to find the books anywhere. So I head back to Rosewood while trying to consider what location might possibly contain these books. I decided that we might have some luck in Ekron, which has a college, but I'm a little concerned about the condition of our engine, as I really don't want to get stranded out there. So as a result, I spend the next few days grinding my mechanics up to 5 so I can repair the engine. After about 3 days, we finally have the skill needed to repair our truck's engine, and then head out on our trip to Ekron. When we arrive to the college, I'm kind of surprised by the relative lack of zombies here, and then begin looting as I find the biggest library I've ever seen in Zomboid. This has to be the place. And we finally strike gold when I find the magazine that teaches you how to create the sword blade. Magazine in hand, we head back to Rosewood so we can get started on forging that sword. And when we arrive, we waste no time forging 6 new blades, sharpening them, and attaching a handle so that we have swords. And in the morning, we inspect our handiwork as we have now crafted the ultimate Zomboid weapon. With our sword crafted, we head towards the Rosewood prison so we can grind our long blade skill for a little bit. It's still pretty low, and I've noticed from using the machete that it gets a lot better with every level we receive, so before hitting the Crossroads Mall, I want to grind it there. When we get to the prison, we just start swinging on everyone we can find. And with the front of the prison clear, we start walking the perimeter, continuing to wipe out any zombies we come across. The sword thus far has felt amazing to use. It often one-shots zombies and doesn't take that much stamina to swing. I have high hopes for what we can achieve once we go to the Crossroads Mall, especially once we get a few more levels in Longblade. I continue fighting with long-bladed weaponry throughout the rest of the day until we eventually get our long-blade skill up to level 3. I return home, as next we're going to enact the final step of our plan, raiding the Crossroads Mall. The next day as we head over to the mall, I stop at the Crossroads as our car is kind of in a rough shape, and I really don't want to deal with car troubles right now, so I'll just hotwire a new one here. There are a lot of zombies here though, so we're forced to fight the ones that approach us as we inspect the vehicles. I walk into a car dealership thinking maybe I can find the keys for one of these vehicles, when once again I make a crucial mistake. But fortunately, the elbow pads paid off once again, as we don't even take a scratch to this. Crisis averted. Following that near nightmare, we spot an open taxi that we can hotwire and head over to the West Point so we can secure a safe house for our raid. And with a West Side safe house secure, we head over to the mall bright and early the next day to start clearing it out. We spent the first day battling through the parking lot, killing hundreds of zombies in the process. We're able to push up to the entrance of the mall, but it's starting to get late. I'm afraid I might get tired soon, so I turned back for now. And after resting up that night in our safe house, we head back to the mall to begin our first real push. This time, we push up to the mall's main entrance and are met with the largest horde I've seen yet, but our sword is able to make quick work of them. Eventually, we're able to clear out the front of the mall and begin pushing for the inside. Kiting the zombies back outside, we begin our fight for the heart of the Crossroads Mall. However, the zombie-infested mall is far too populated for us to take out in one day. Retreating back to the safe house, we plan one final push into the heart of Zombieland. When we return to the mall, a few stragglers from the day before remain outside, but our primary goal remains to clear the inside. After taking out the remainder of the zombies at the front entrance, there's a lull in their counter-offensive, so we use our gun to summon more demons from the darkness. The gun does its job well and attracts more zombies for us to fight, but the sword runs through them all like butter, meaning we have to summon even more. We repeat the process of firing our gun into the darkness and killing the zombies a few times, but eventually no zombie is close enough to hear the call, meaning we're gonna have to fight in the darkness if we want to fully clear the mall. Additionally, we've had to start wearing our gas masks to prevent corpse sickness due to the massive pile of corpses we've created, but the respirator filter is starting to wear out and we're starting to get queasy. We're also starting to run out of swords, meaning we're gonna have to go back to Rosewood to craft more, so I decided the battle for the mall will end here. The sword has more than proven itself. Chastity has lived for 2 months, 1 day, and 1 hour, killing 2,035 zombies with her favorite weapon being the sword. Blacksmithing has proven to be totally worth it if you can manage a long-term save. It takes a lot of effort, but the sword is extremely strong and only gets better the more you use it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and be on the lookout for more of Chastity Hines in the future, as I plan on continuing to save to see how long Chastity can last. See y'all next time.